All right. It is Friday, April 11th, 2025. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Um, so we talked about it a little bit before. I want to describe an interaction I had yesterday. And I don't know what will come of it, whether it's related to transits, design, or just an interesting experience. But I had this really strange experience yesterday. I got up, I was I found myself struggling with um, getting to work. I was just like kind of stuck. And I decided to get in my car, and I have a Tesla. And in the Tesla, there's buttons for I'm hungry, I'm feeling lucky, and quite literally, it'll take you somewhere different. It presents a series of choices. So I did actually choose the choice, but it was the closest one. So I chose what my car selected for me. And so it was a local park. Really beautiful park. Like as you go in, it slopes down the hill. There's massive trees, big and open. A really beautiful park. It used to be owned by the federal government. I think it's still owned by, but it's not managed by them. So it's sort of managed by a local society now. And so I get in my car and I'm walking sort of down this hill. And I spot this fella sitting on a bench. And he was probably like 30, 29. He was clearly seemed to work there. He had a sort of a clipboard. He had the sort of the hat on to keep the sun off him. He was obviously going to be there all day. And I spotted him, and I there was something I found myself not wanting to make eye contact with him, actually, when I think about it. But I just kind of ignored him, and I walked over to a big tree. And this tree was probably 7 feet wide at the base. So it was a massive tree, 120, 140 feet high. And I tell you this
What kind
because
of tree was it?
that's a good question. I would maybe an oak, but I wasn't paying attention at the time. I was more drawn to just how big the tree was. It was majestic and had a cool energy to it.
Mhm.
Um, and I went up to the tree, and I'm actually very careful not to stand on the roots of a tree. I'm just trying to stand on the earth around it. And I put my hand against it because I was going to do my little gratitude practice. So I put my hand against a tree. I recite Ho'oponopono, and it's just kind of like a way for me to give and receive energy with the tree. This fella comes over and tells me, am I aware that I'm suffocating the tree? Am I like I'm hurting the tree? I'm killing the tree. I said, I'm not sure that I believe that. So it's quite a large tree, and I think my hand on it is, and I'm just basically exchanging energy with this tree. I'm here to get grounded. I'm here to enjoy the sunshine. I'm here to just mind my own business. And he wouldn't let up. He kept sort of saying, "No, you don't understand. You're killing the tree." And he kind of stepped in my path. And initially, I didn't even want to engage. I felt like I think I even said, like, I'm just here for a walk. But he kind of kept persisting. It kind of escalated in that he kept attacking me verbally. He was telling me that I was unintelligent, that I should read more, that I don't understand science, um, and then proceeded to tell me that it was the equivalent of putting my hand over a baby's mouth and trying to suffocate it. And I was like, I don't understand. Like this tree is massive. My hand wasn't where its mouth was. But he just kept going. Then it was just this weird interaction where I found myself curious about like trying to understand his logic. I was trying to understand where he was coming from. And it seemed like he just needed to win this argument. Like there was nothing more important than convincing me that I am hurting trees by putting my hand on it. And then he started giving more examples, like that it's the equivalent of beating a dog with a large stick. And again, I was like, that's absurd. That doesn't make sense. I just want to go for my walk. And again, he realized it, and he kept sort of standing in my path, like really didn't want me to walk by. And I felt the need to stand up for myself rather than just walk on. I needed to just like hold my ground and be like, this is insane. But eventually I was like, you know what? I've had enough. I'm not enjoying this interaction. I'm just going to go and enjoy my walk. And his final comment to me was, well, go enjoy your walk as you rape the park, which is pretty strong language and offensive language. Um, and so I just did. I just went and tried to enjoy my walk. At that point, I was shaking, like I was upset. I was bothered by this interaction. A little part of me was frustrated that someone is paid to interact with the public in a public place like that. Like that, I find offensive and bothersome. Um, so I went for a walk for maybe 5, 10 minutes and then came back. And he was now interacting with an older couple with their dogs, but seemed to be having rapport with them. He kept saying, "Oh, finally, someone that understands." Like he was saying this to make sure I could hear it, I think, as I was walking by. And then he looked at me and said, it's great chatting with you. And I remember I just said to him, "Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that," and rolled my eyes as trying to make sure these people could see me rolling my eyes. What I wanted to say was, you're an idiot. Stay away from me." But I didn't. So that was my interaction. I then went back to the office and I was telling Wendy and Kat that works here with about it, and they were pushing me to go like report, like go to the city council or go to the and just like tell people what happened. And so I did, and but I found myself resistant to doing that too. Like it was, I think,
What was the receptivity or non-receptivity when you went and shared it?
so I went to the local, I guess it's the local city hall for our local district. There was two young women there that what I find when I walk into these places is nobody wants to deal with conflict, so they're always on their heels. So I actually went there with Kat, who's a lovely, petite, very friendly, calming influence, and I'm actually glad I went there with her because I felt like Mohawk guy walking in there, coming in and describing the situation may not have been taken seriously. But yeah, they were kind of concerned at first. Once I started,
About the tree or about the interaction?
I think they were more bothered that a human would say those things. I think telling someone enjoy your walk as you rape the park is a pretty remarkable statement. That's not
Mhm,
normal, right?
mhm.
And especially from, well, anyone, but like from one man to another man when you're just trying to go for a walk. So they seemed kind of concerned. A third woman walked in and asked what was going on. She seemed actually interested in the conversation. At the end of the day, they gave me a business card for the park guy who's away for a week. So that's where it kind of ended. I did document to the best of my memory what happened on a video and sent an email, and that's where it sits. Um, the reason I wanted to talk about it is I didn't go about my day normally yesterday. I felt this need to, I don't know, be distracted or do something different. And I hit that button in my car, and it took me to this interaction, which was highly unusual. So I kind of left it as, did I get my instincts wrong? And that's what I got? Or was it important for me to be there to, I didn't even confront this guy, but like to stand up to him? I a few people commented saying it was good I was there because he's probably done that to a lot of other people and someone needed to do or say something. So I'm trying to take
Maybe
that.
he wasn't really a park person. Maybe he was just a nut pretending to be in charge of the park.
I mean, it crossed my mind. He's it crossed my mind. He was holding the brochures. He had, he was I think he worked there. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Um, yeah, ask me some questions about it because I'm trying, like it really left me flummoxed, frustrated. I felt like there was some.
So this is I think from the standpoint of the listeners, the real issue that we could address is how, when you're confronted by a point of view that is completely disparate from what you know and believe, how do you know what truth is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did find myself asking him questions. Like I was there from a point of curiosity. I was, every point that he made, I would I would question it because of my own experiences.
How
And
did you question it?
that's a good question. I mean, at the time, I remember feeling my chest was tight. I probably wasn't breathing.
So what did you say to him to ask a question? Were your questions putting him on the defensive and in making his perspective stronger because he didn't want to be wrong? Or were your questions allowing him to feel like his point of view and perspective was valid, but you didn't understand it?
Yeah, I mean, it's curious. As you said that, it did remind me of old interactions with the sociopath in my life. And the reason that is that whenever he would say something, and I knew it not to be accurate or
True.
right, like putting my hand on the tree would not kill the tree. That
Right.
so then I don't remember what I said, but I backed it up with I don't believe that's true. I didn't put my hand over the only place it can receive oxygen. His response every time was, "Oh, that's interesting." Like that was the word he used, but in such a condescending kind of gaslighting way, and then would say, "You should read more. You should."
So, Sean, in the first statement that he made to you, that you're killing the tree, why didn't you just say to him, "Thank you for telling me that," and walk away? Why did you engage with someone who you knew from the start had a perspective that was very skewed to truth and who was clearly out to prove a point that was invalid? It's a little bit like some of the human design people.
Yeah. Um, I think initially it was because I was blown away by his point and logic that I think I thought he was kidding at first. Like it didn't seem, yeah, I don't think I thought I was on camera or TV or something, but it was certainly, it just was so absurd. Um, I couldn't help but engage a bit.
Yes, you could.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking back, yeah.
I mean, when you meet somebody who has a point of view, and we're dealing with that a lot now
Mhm.
in the collective consciousness of the planet, the polarities of people who have certain perspectives versus other people who have other perspectives, they're not going to agree with each other. And to engage activates emotionality that can do exactly what he did to you. It threw you off balance and it made you question your truth, and it made you question reality in a way that is not productive.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I appreciate all that. I was remarkably unemotional at the time. This is the other thing now that I reflect on it, I'll be in this situation. I handled it, and it's later that there's like like not high from it, but like my body's on high alert. Like I can literally feel my body vibrating.
You were criticized and attacked
Mhm.
in, and people do this a lot, where we're fed a piece of information that isn't really vetted with reality or fact or science. And it throws people off emotionally.
Mhm.
And in part, some people like to do that.
He seemed to be enjoying himself for
Oh,
sure.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Like arguably he was turned on by the interaction because he had like a little smirk the whole time.
Well, the question is, why did you, when you knew that this was not going to be a productive interaction for you, why did you stay and talk to him?
Yeah.
And you also didn't take into account the consequence it would have on your day,
Mhm.
which is really the most important aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely it ruined my day. It just was racing around. Like, did I imagine this interaction? Did I handle it correctly? Why? What am I supposed to get from it? I mean, I
You're overthinking. And if you're uncomfortable, leave the field. There are three choices. You know, I talked about this in communication skills. You were dealing with the mental waking world. There are three options. You change yourself, you change the other, you change the environment. He wasn't going to change. As soon as he opened his mouth, you knew he wasn't going to change.
I don't think I knew that at the time, but it was apparent pretty quickly. So yeah.
Well, if you had thought about it,
Mhm.
it would be like somebody saying to you, how dare you drive a Tesla
Mhm.
when we hate Elon Musk?
Mhm. Which I experience regularly. It occurred to me that he may have seen me pull up in the Tesla and was triggered just by seeing the vehicle because I have been experiencing things like that. Um, yeah,
And people who would judge you for the car you drive, who are those people?
hmm.
And do you care?
Well, that's a good question. I do still.
So
I'm,
you have a need for approval.
I don't know if it's approval. It's frustration in humanity stifling progress. You know, the people that dump on me about my car are driving around their gas and oil cars that are poisoning the very, like this guy in his gas and oil car is poisoning the very trees that he's protecting.
Yeah,
And
but the Teslas have lithium batteries
Mhm.
that don't get destroyed without destroying the environment. And in the Palisades fire, part of the reason it burned so much is there were so many Teslas where the lithium batteries exploded.
Is that true?
Yes,
It's interesting. Because I know when they've designed the batteries, they're compartmentalized. It would take a lot
of
of damage
heat.
to do it. So, hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've got,
I mean, you have to look at your own, all we can do is be in our own skin, in our own consciousness. And that's the only thing that we're in charge of. So when you're out in the world, the mental waking world, make your choices about who you engage with and who you don't engage with. And this guy is probably someone you'll never see again in your life. So what he says has no bearing on you.
No, for
I
sure.
mean, what comes to my mind is there's a tree here outside of Charleston on John's Island that's called angel oak. It is the biggest tree I have ever seen in my life. And there's a whole park built around the tree. And you have hundreds of thousands of people coming through to look at angel oak. And all of them are putting their hands on the tree, loving the tree, touching the tree, taking pictures with the tree. And if that tree hasn't died, we have data that says this guy's full of shit.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, I know. There seems to be something in me that feels like it needs to fight for others. And in general, no one seems to appreciate it either. So I mean that's the frustration I
What do you
feel.
mean fight for others? Were you fighting for the tree?
No, I think I was fighting for other people that would go and try to enjoy that park. Like this guy sucked the life out of that park. Um, it was offensive to me.
So why didn't you say to him, your comment is offensive to me?
Oh, I think I did. I think I absolutely did. Certainly the inflamed like the stuffing beating a dog and stuff. I was like, are you serious? Like that? You're comparing putting my hand on there. Are you serious? And he was seemed to be serious about it. Like he was just so
You
sure.
were engaging with someone and there was no benefit for you.
Hmm.
So the question is, why did you engage?
Well, and that is my overarching question slash why did I put myself there? Like I was part of me is like I need to get to work and get my shit together. And then part of me is like, no, I need to hit this button in my car and go. And then as soon it wasn't like half an hour later and like, oh, isn't that a coincidence? It was like it was on within like 20 seconds. So it was like, was that my soul wanting needing this interaction?
Don't
Was it
overthink
feeding this?
it, Sean. Let it go.
Okay.
Release it. Could you? Would you?
Yeah,
When?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just
You
keep
know,
having these.
a lot of people who have different views, who have different energy. And if you engage and get sucked in, there's nothing left for you.
Hmm. I was about to say, yeah, I gotta remember my own little rules set, which is be more like Batman, less like Superman. Batman, they ask Batman to help. Superman just goes in and invites himself and tries to fix things that were none of his business. So that was more Superman there.
You have the 3410.
Yeah.
The 10 is um, a gate where you try to offer help to people. And if you look in Beyond Human Design book that I wrote, I say for the gate 10, make sure you are invited to take on a role. And there is a subtlety in the communication you described, which is he came at you in a critical, condescending energy, and you responded to him, which opened a conversation with him. In the future, if somebody whose energy is not compatible with you approaches you, you say thank you very much and you move on.
Hmm.
Because you already had the information
Hmm.
that this was not a person you would align with.
Yeah, I noticed that when I started telling you about it, the first thing I said was something to the effect of, I I made eye contact with him, right? Or I tried not to. Like I heard myself say that. So there was a feeling like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? Like there was just like a glimmer of this is odd.
There are a lot of ways that you could have handled it.
Hmm.
You could have said to him, "Thank you very much. I think I'll just go enjoy my walk." Disengage from a crazy man.
Hmm. Yeah. I think at the time it was that I was confused that I wasn't allowed to go and have my walk. That I was somehow already a bad person for being there. That's
But
where I
you
became.
yeah, but that was someone saying you're a bad person.
Mhm,
But you don't believe that.
mhm.
So why did you take it on?
Yeah.
Does want for approval. It hooked you.
It, yeah. Yeah. I did try to disengage like 5 times. He was quite adamant.
Oh, in a situation like that, you could have just walked away.
Yeah.
Or you could have said, "I'm running out of time, I need to go." But the main thing is you put yourself and stayed in a situation that you knew you didn't want to be in.
Mhm. Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. I'm trying not to spend time thinking about it, but there's something about it that's bothersome. But I'm taking everything you're saying and giving it some time. Hmm.
You might journal with the tree.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. All right, well let's move on from that because that consumed a lot of my time yesterday, and it's seemingly
Not worth consuming time today.
no, no, for sure. Okay. Did you want to? I know you wanted to talk about the mandala of synthesis because we talked about that a bit in it was in class.
Mhm.
Can I share your screen and talk through that? There's a couple of interesting things that you pointed out that I guess I saw but didn't understand until you clarified it. So
Yes, I can certainly share my screen and do that. Um, and I also would like the viewers to know that I have a book coming out on April 22nd called Human Design and Health. And it's 3 books that Ra and Marvin and I recorded as transcripts from workshops we did. And given that so much of it was human design and health, Marvin and I both wrote commentaries in the book on what held scientifically and what did not. And there is a lot in the human design system that is not scientific, is absolutely disproved, and is still being used and providing people with misinformation about who they are. So um, that book might be an important book. It's source material, and it's going to come out in April. So I will share my screen.
yeah, we've talked about this quite a bit. Like there is information, calculations, statements that are being replicated, emphasized, new areas of work being grown on it. Yeah, it's a concern.
Um, okay, so this is the mandala of synthesis, and there's lots of things coded into it. Early in design, Ross said the human design system is a synthesis of the Kabbalistic tree of life, which some people may never have seen. Let me see if I can find an image.
Yeah, and I'll back that statement up. I don't find much reference to the Tree of Life in
There
almost
is none.
you see. So
There is none. Ra had no interest in understanding the tree of life. He'd never used it. He never worked with it. Um, Let me see if I can
so
find.
let me ask you a question about that then, because the only time I've seen the Tree of Life, besides your work, was in Zeno's book. There was like two or
In
three
what?
in Zeno's book. So
Oh,
there was like two or three pages of it in there, and that's the only instance that I've seen it. And I only got that book after you had mentioned it, so that like it wasn't even on my radar. Um, that I mean, when people talk about human design, it's a synthesis of I Ching, of the
right.
Kabbalist, but then there's no actual
Tree of
information.
life.
Yeah. So I understand that like uh Ra was not very interested in the astrology of it all, although it he would reference it. Um, if he said it was a synthesis of the Tree of Life, why was it never referenced? Like, was it too complicated? Was it he he had the system where he liked it and that was it, and it became a complacency thing?
No. Ra did not um respect the I don't have a, let me see if I can just grab this. I will grab this image, which I'll put on another page. Hold on. Um, when I asked him about certain aspects of the tree of life or of other things he basically told me to get rid of my astrology books,
Mhm.
that there was no need for them anymore. And there was absolutely no way, as an astrologer, I was going to get rid of the key information on which the whole human design system was based. That would have just been stupid.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me.
So do you think he viewed human design as an upgrade over all these other methodologies, and therefore they could all be like discarded, and it really was this is the new blueprint?
Yes, he thought it was, if you had the human design system, you didn't need anything else. But he didn't really understand what the human design system was. And I'm just trying to get the tree of life in here so that I can show it to you. Okay, now I have it. Um, and let me save this. Let me save it as a PDF. Export it. See if I can put it. I don't know where to put it. So I'll just do it this way. Okay. I will share this screen with the tree of life image and show it to you. This image shows you the tree of life. In the tree of life, in esoteric theory, the tree of life was an ancient symbolic representation of the evolution of consciousness from birth until enlightenment, if you will. Uh, the tree of life in the bottom triangle is basically the early development of personality. And when we go from the sacral center to the root center, You can see in the Tree of Life, and this is the builders of the Adytum Tree of Life that I studied and that I use. So you have in the kingdom, which is the root center, four worlds. You can see four different colors. Every energy center in the Tree of Life has all four worlds embedded within it. In addition, the major arcana of the tarot deck is symbolic of the issues and development that occurs in a human as they develop their consciousness. So, what I've done in my classes is to go through the Tree of Life, and we've gotten up to the um, second horizontal path, the upper mind. And as you begin to study the cards and their symbolism and the paths, there is a correspondence. And let's see if I can do it this way. Yeah, I could do it this way. Oops. So you can see, if I share it this way, that at the very center, we have centers in the body graph that correspond to some degree to the centers in the Tree of Life. If you look at the sacral center to the root, in the Tree of Life, you have one channel, but they break into four. In the body graph, you have three channels because the fourth channel, the physical body, is incarnating and is not part of what is being discussed until you get to the 31st path of intelligence. So as you go through the body map, there are very distinct correspondences to the issues that you're working through in the evolution of consciousness. So in this mandala, which Ra talked about, but never understood, never explained, and when I asked him about it, he was very dismissive. He didn't know about it. He didn't get any information from the voice. He thought it was a throwaway. But because I was studying it and I understood it, I knew that there were correspondences. And if you take the 32 paths of intelligence in the Tree of Life and you multiply it by 12, you get 384. That's the number of lines in the I Ching. So there is a correspondence, which I'm working on correlating. So in the mandala of synthesis, which I have as a registered trademark, so it is my image that I've created, I've color coded it to pick up all of the things coded into it. So, for example, the astrology is coded into it in my mandala. You have Aries, and notice that there are three divisions in each astrological house. So instead of doing it as one sign of 30 degrees, I've broken it into what's called decanates of 10 degrees each. And I did that because as we break it down, there are sub-meanings to all of the astrology. And so if this is the human design system, is a synthesis of the Tree of Life, astrology, the I Ching, chakras, and the piece that I added in is developmental psych, then you need to understand all the component parts if you're going to do an accurate reading. So my wheel is color coded for the astrological signs. Aries is a fire sign. Then we have an earth sign. Then we have an air sign. We have a water, so we have fire, water, earth, air, and earth, four elements. Every so the cardinal signs have the four elements. The fixed signs, Taurus is earth, Leo is fire, Scorpio is water, and Aquarius is air. And if we go to the mutable signs, we have air, we have earth, we have fire, and we have water. So the wheel is broken into threes and into fours. So we have four fixed signs, four earth signs, four air signs, four water signs. But then we could take fire to fire to fire, and you have three. Earth to earth to earth, we have three. So astrology, you can look at looking at the trines, or you can look at squares. And they tell you different things. And those are coded into the body graph. So when I do a body graph, I use the astrology in addition to the hexagrams. Now, so these are the signs of the zodiac. I would recommend any of the listeners who are interested in design memorize the signs, memorize the qualities and characteristics of each sign. I do have an astrology essentials book. I have two books that are designed to teach what you need to know. And the astrology book I wrote the way I wished somebody had written it so I could have learned astrology with a lot less stress. So the wheel, the mandala, is coding the astrology and color coding it. Then we have the centers, chakras. Now, in the body graph, we have 9. In the tree of life, we have 10. And in chakras, Indian chakras, Hindu chakras, we have 7. Ra believed that we became a 9-centered body in the late 1700s. That's bullshit. We didn't change how many chakras we had, especially when the tree of life says we had not just 10, but 12. There's one above and there's one below. In the mandala of synthesis, you'll note that the chakras are color coded. And on the outside of the wheel, 61, 13, 63, 25, 2, 15, 7, 64, 40. Those are all in yellow centers. The green, there's only one green center, the ajna. And that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gates. The red is the sacral and the heart. And the brown are the other centers, the root, the solar plexus, the splenic center, and the throat center. So within the outside rim of the wheel, you can see where in the body graph the color is. The next thing coded are all of the hexagrams and the trigrams. When I'm doing readings, when I'm teaching classes, I always look at how the hexagrams come together. So, for example, the first hexagram is all yang. If we look, for example, at the ninth hexagram, which is in from the root center to the sacral center through the 52-9, you see that there's a yang on the bottom, and then you have a yin line with two more yang lines. So it's wind, match it up, and heaven. What might that mean if you think about it? In terms of the hexagram, if you use your own logic to read the hexagrams, you can come up with the meaning of it based on how the channel. So if we look at the 9 and we look at the 52, look at how the 52 has two yin lines and then a yang, and it's repeating. So the 52, right, is mountain with mountain above it. And yet on the bottom, we have heaven with wind over it. So think about those energies in your own consciousness and begin to play with how you would read the energies of yin and yang. You're a little knitbrow. Do you have a question?
You've said it a few times, like you'll say contemplate wind over heaven.
Mhm.
And then my mind just goes blank. Like I'm not, I don't, can't seem to draw a correlation to what I would.
When you look at the 52
Mhm.
and you look at the 9, and that forms a channel. If you have a hexagram that is so yin as 52, and it's paired up with a hexagram that is mostly 5 of the 6 lines is yang,
Mhm.
whereas in 52, 4 out of 6 lines is yin.
Mhm.
What do you make of that? How would you read that 52-9? Instead of taking what Ross said and making it gospel,
Mhm.
if you have the 52-9 and you think about those energies of a fairly open energy that wants to have some stability in it, the 52, and then the 9 is pretty solid
Mhm.
with only a little bit of openness. And the 52-9 is a channel. I have it in my lunar design. It's inner stillness. It's a very still place within you. How does that happen given these hexagrams? And so when I say think about it, I'm saying don't take somebody's word for how to interpret your own design. Learn how to look at the hexagrams and to look at the energy of them and make sense of it for yourself.
Okay. exploring. So you have the 52-9. I have the 9, and I know not to read into that too much. But if I, because most of what we talk about is the channels. So I have half a channel. Help me through that, like with this new, not new, just approach of ignoring how a gate has been explained to me. Like I know I don't, it's not like I don't have the energy of the 52. It's just not accentuated in my chart.
No, if you have it, you have it.
Well, no, but I don't have the 52.
You
In
don't need the 52.
Okay.
You have the 9. So what else is in your sacral center? And how does the 9 interface with your sacral center? You do have the 34 in your sacral center.
Hmm.
And that's a very strong, and look at how interesting that is. I picked the 34, and the bottom is the same as the 9, but the top hexagram is the mirror image.
Hmm.
So here's an energy that is activated. The 34 is always activated in you, but the 9 is not. It is activated, but it's not necessarily. Its pathway is going to go through the 34, 20, 57, 10.
Hmm. That's it.
So
That's interesting. I think somehow I almost viewed the gates that connect as almost like a tube or a water slide. Like you can't just jump from one energy to the other somehow. I don't know why my brain did that. Um, that's an important question
I don't
of
understand what you're saying.
I'm not sure I do yet either. It's more just trying to.
I want to say it again.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a body graph.
Mhm.
This is the human design body graph. Everybody, when they're born, has all 64 channels
Yeah.
activated. When you're born and when you're developing, certain things are a little bit stronger than other things inside of you.
Mhm.
And when you come in contact with something that activates you, you can express yourself. You're not broken. You're not missing anything. Even a reflector has every single channel activated. It may not be emphasized, but they're not missing anything. They're a human being. They need to develop and work with and make sense out of who they are and how they want to be in the world. Now, I'm going to move on. Each hexagram covers a certain number of degrees based on the way it's broken down by the hexagram lines. The lines in and of themselves mean nothing. Profile means nothing. You can't take a line from one hexagram to another hexagram and give it meaning in a person's life when you have so much complexity within a mandala that can be decoded. And within a human being, to say that 2 lines out of 384 lines are going to tell you something about who that person is for the rest of their life is just naive bullshit. I mean, it's irresponsible. We also have centers. They're color coded. Now, I haven't finished this, so let me go to this one. The lines in the body graph, the channels, I have to keep blowing the cat hair out of my mouth. That's what I'm doing because I have a cat sitting on my desk. Um, so you can see that I've color coded things according to the astrological wheel. We have Libra, which is a lighter green than Scorpio. We have Aquarius, that is the purple of spirit. Pisces is a little bit more red purple. Cancer is like a gold color. Not, oh, yeah. And then we have Virgo is the light green, and Pisces is a red purple. So you have the astrology all coded into the mandala. The cover here is showing you all of the components in callouts. I'm going to stop my sharing.
Okay.
There is a lot coded in to the body map.
Hmm.
And most of the information in the human design track is not coded and is not taught and is not used. That's unfortunate
Mhm.
because ideally, if we use it and correlate it with the paths of intelligence in the tree of life, the body graph then serves as a roadmap to self-actualization. And in the charts that I use, which are calculated from 3 months before birth to 3 months after birth, when the cortex of the baby is developing, we have a map, a road map to how somebody at 3 months of age is now ready to manifest their full potential. Nobody's broken. Nobody's missing anything. Nobody is deficient in being able to manifest in the world.
Mhm.
99% of the population are manifesting generators.
The one thought that's come to mind, I don't know if there's anything to this, but the speed at which life is happening right now, information's being shared, you know, uh, social media, dopamine, like it almost, it's, I've had this thought a few times where like when the statistics came out for type 25 years ago and, the various stats that Raw presented, that would have been probably more relatable at the time. Like the way I've heard or maybe the shortcomings of a manifesting generator, and that, probably bullshit too, but um, it, like, to me, it does seem like everybody is an MG these days. Like just the energy, the chaos, the
In
uh,
composite, most people are we are designed as human beings
Mhm.
to be whole.
Mhm.
In our lifespan, when I first started graduate school, we were trying to discern if development psychologically stopped at a certain age. And um, one of my professors, well, numerous of my professors, especially Bernice Newbarton and Sheldon Tobin, were doing the first studies ever done on menopause in women and whether there were correlates to changes of personality. Um, Kubler-Ross was studying death and dying and what happened developmentally during that process. We grow, and the tree of life, and Jung, and remember, I was trained as a Jungian analyst. Jung said in his collected works that development occurred throughout the lifetime, and that the tree of life was the roadmap for self-actualization. He got it right. Um, the issue is that the tree of life is very complex.
Mhm.
A lot of the terminology is Hebrew, and it's not a Hebrew or Jewish system. The ancient civilizations had images and frescoes on their walls of the tree of life. It's very ancient. It dates back to Babylonian times. What happened was that Moses brought it in to Egypt, and then when he made it more public, wrote it down, he left out the vowels, the Hebrew vowels, so that the mystics only had access to the secrets of the tree of life, because he didn't believe that the population was capable of internalizing it. Now, Ra fell into the same idea. And what he said to me many times is, you can't dumb it down. I'm dumbing this down to the fourth grade level for people. And he did. He took a system that's highly complex, that he was told was a synthesis, and he took the synthesis out of it and made it a formulaic system that disempowered people.
Mhm.
And that was initially when he didn't know anything to do with it. So he sat down with Jurgen and Zeno and Chaitanya and maybe Martin, maybe who, I don't know who all the people who had input, but they came up initially with, according to the human design body graph, you're either a to wait or to do. And that's based on the centers and how they're configured. And you either are a single, a double, a split, a triple split, a quadruple split, and that's it. That's all they had.
Mhm.
And they taught that. When I first studied design in March of 1996, all we had was to do or to wait. And then Ra came up with the types, and he believed there were 4 types. And then he began to think maybe the manifesting generator is a subtype of a generator. I disproved that because statistically, when I checked for type, there were 5 types independent of each other. And whether it's a split, a triple split, quadruple split, or a single definition, that held. Centers held, because the factor analyses of the centers held for how many factors was in each center. And they differentiated from the other centers, which is important. Circuitry did not hold. The PHS system does not hold. The penta system is bullshit. The penta system is based on the 3 channels called in the Tree of Life, which I can show you. In the Tree of Life, you have 3 channels, 1, 2, 3, that are going up the center. So first it's only 1, but then it breaks through the splenic center and the solar plexus into 3. And the task in the 27th path of intelligence in the tree of life, which balances the splenic center and the splenic center and the solar plexus, um, is discerning the difference between truth and falsity. So at the point at which you go up these three central channels, in order to actually manifest them in the world properly, you must have completed the 27th path, which will take your emotional reactivity, move it to the splenic side, and transform it to creative intelligence. If you're incapable of doing that, then you're not functioning actively with those three centers, those three channels. And if you're in a relationship, let's say you're in a relationship with someone who has the 214, but is not moving in the right direction for themselves, of what use would they be in a penta? They would take the penta down. Let's say you have the 46 and 29. If you're not clear on boundaries and on what is balancing between you and the role you're playing for another person, you may be depleting yourself. And what would you add to a penta? So Ra is right. Those three channels are very critical in coming together and functioning in consciousness. But he didn't understand what they were at all.
Well, and he also attempted to stretch it into a product, a business offering to monetize,
Yes.
right? He took something yeah, he took it way off the other end. Um,
Well, Ra was um, a poor man. When Marvin and I met him in 1996, he had no money. His wife and kids were in Ibiza, and he was coming to the States to make money so he could live. And then he moved to America um, in the spring, I believe, of 1999,
and
which,
sorry, on that point, like he moved to America as Ra Uruhu, right?
no, in 98, spring of 98.
Okay.
And he moved to America because he thought he could make money.
But he moved there under this new name too, right? Because his former identity was declared dead. Like,
Well, no.
no?
Um, he lived in Canada, in Toronto, and he went to Ibiza. He left his car at the airport. I don't know what year. Um, he had experience with the voice in 1987, and he said he'd been living there for 6 or 7 years. Incognito. He had no identity. He changed his name from Alan Krakauer to Ra'uruhu. And he was declared dead by his wife, and he left two children, a daughter and a stepson. And when we met him in 1999, 1998, I'm sorry. Uh, well, I met Ra in 1996. I didn't know his full story until September of 96. At which point he visited Marvin and me, stayed with us for 2 weeks in our home. And he liked to tell his story. He thought it was really cool. He claimed to have lived in a tree. He didn't live in a tree. He lived in a hut. He had a desk. He had a dog. He claimed Barley was a wild dog, but Barley was his dog, and Barley stayed with him, and Barley came inside the hut. Um, Rod told us that he left his car and he left his family and went to Ibiza. And he told us that what he did before he left was to sell things that didn't exist. So he was a scam artist. And his name was not known.
Mhm.
Nobody knew his real name. Why? I think he was in trouble.
Mhm.
So everything was cash. He had no identity anywhere, and he was proud of it. Um, so when he came to work with Zeno and Chaitanya, he had a lot of sannyasin working with him. And Marvin and I were sannyasin, so we immediately became part of the inner circle in his mind. Because sannyasins, Osho, in 1990, died, and he came to America in 1980. So Osho was in America for 10 years, and he was not working with good people. He was working with sannyasins who were not discerning. Marvin and I, after we took sannyas and were in India, came home and we burned everything that came out of the ashram um, in 1979. So when Osho came to the States in 1980, we never wanted to see him again because he had lost something, because the people around him were not good people. Many of them had run away from their life. They were not happy people. And I think about one person who um, I didn't know he ended up at the ashram, but my story is that um, starting in 1974, I started having Kundalini experiences, and a lot of my psychic abilities came crashing in on me. And it was pretty scary to see things and know things about people that they hadn't told me. So I had worked with many gurus and psychics and was very involved in the Jungian community, the psychological community, the hypnosis community. Um, and I was studying the tree of life. I had already studied thought field therapy, which is tapping. I had studied the Sedona method, which is releasing. I had studied astrology extensively to learn Catherine de Jersey's secrets. So I was already very skilled in all of the component parts of the body map.
Mhm.
And Rod, because he was interested in having professionals validate design, he was open to Marvin and to me. Marvin's a double boarded MD, and I'm a PhD psychologist out of University of Chicago. from a department that was the first integrative social science department in the world. So Ra told us a lot about his own personal life. And initially, he stayed with us um, and shared his story. And he was very um, charming and trusting. One of my clients told me yesterday that there was a human design class near her. She lives in uh, Montecito, California. And she went to the class and she had her book of mine with her. And at the end of the class, she went up and she said to the woman, because she said the woman was talking about Ra like he was this god. And she went up and she said, "Have you ever met him?" And she said, "No. Did you?" And my client said, "Yes. In fact, I had several readings with him."
Hmm.
So the question was, what was he like? And my client said, "Well, he was charming." Ra could be very good storyteller, very charming. He could, put it on and turn it off. He could be a real bastard and he could be a charming prince.
Mhm.
So when Marvin and I met him, we got a lot of his story about what a scam artist he was. He was sort of proud of it. And human design was in its very early infancy. And there were very few concepts associated with that body graph. He was still learning how to use it. And the first class I went to with him, he had just come up with stories about circuits. Now, I tested circuits. They're not scientifically valid the way he has them. I'm sure if we tested them with the tree of life, they would be valid, but not the way he had it.
Mhm.
So by 1998, I was ready. I was done. I didn't want anything more to do with him because he was something of a wimp. He couldn't stand up to Zeno or to other people. And he was creating things that were not part of the original Black Book. The Black Book is the real human design. Have you seen a copy of the Black Book?
I'm pretty sure at some point someone sent me a PDF of it. I have not opened it. I've lately though it's top of mind is maybe where to go. Just to
Well, it's the only information that Ra was given.
Mhm.
Everything that Ra was given is in that Black Book. So that is source material, original source material. The source material that I'm publishing now in my books that I wrote with Ra are not all accurate because they came later. So the point of saying all of this is that we have a system that is a synthesis. And if you want to learn the human design system, you need to move beyond human design because it's an incomplete system. And Ra had the intelligence to have Marvin and me on the assignment of validating design scientifically so it could be a scientific spiritual system. And I have done that over 25 years. And I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And I also, based on my astrology background and developmental psychology background, expanded the calculations to include the four worlds of the tree of life and developmental critical periods in early human development. So if you want the real thing, it's noble energy maps. If you want misinformation, go to human design.
Thinking, I've been thinking a lot about when I stumbled across your work, and part of it was around the body graph copyright at the time. I don't remember why I was drawn to that, but I
Yeah,
think
let's
also,
copyright.
yeah, but I think also, because this just keeps popping in my head, but like I heard Ra say something to the effect of generators are some of the dumbest people. And as soon as I heard that, I was out. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
was like, I need to, that's not okay. Right?
That's
And
like the guy telling you not to put your hand on the
yeah,
tree.
that's what I'm thinking. Like there's some sort of, it was like, nope, this isn't for me, not right. And just a bumbling path to kind of get to that point. But yeah, there was something um, unkind, untrue, disempowering, um, and not okay about statements like that, especially from someone that people are choosing to
What's
make.
even worse, Sean, is stuff like if you have an open heart center, you're more prone to heart attacks. On 5,000 cases, matched samples, people who had heart attacks, people who didn't have heart attacks, there was no statistical difference between the two groups.
Well,
And
it's
saying to somebody who has an open self center, don't ever make promises.
Mhm.
Well, I make promises all the time, and I keep my promises because my self center is active when I in composite, but not in the human design.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Can you imagine telling a child, oh, this is just your emotional wave, it'll pass, while they're in the midst of a tantrum? How disempowering would that be of their feelings?
well, and borderline dangerous. Like if you insinuate that someone with is going to be prone to heart attacks based on a picture, um,
It's a
people
suggestion.
suggestion, right? It's a hypnotic,
Yeah,
it's very, very dangerous. And I mean that's what ultimately drove me to discovering hypnosis was, going to see a doctor about a pain I had in my foot, having every test done, every scan, everything over 8 months. And then the woman just looked me in the eye and said, I can't find the problem. I guess you're just gonna have to take Advil for the rest of your life. And like in me, I still remember the moment. It was a giant fuck you, right? Like it was like inside, like I'm not doing that. It still took me 6 years to dig into hypnosis. And I think I told you about the session I had with one fellow where he guided me through what was called the frozen glove technique. And it was like my hand was in a snowbank and I directed the energy around. And by the time it went to my foot where this pain that had never gone away, I got rid of it. Like it was such an eye opener. And that later that night, and I'm sure I told you this as well, like my whole body woke up. I went from favoring this foot where my three toes were like always jammed together to I'm sitting in an Uber an hour after this hypnosis and my toes are dancing inside my shoe. And then I went for a walk and then my hip hurt and my back because my body was readjusted.
adjusted. Uh-huh.
Like it was the most clear example, but I had to cure my foot, and I had to like disregard what this high
Idiot said.
yeah, like she was highly decorated with her stuff and she had a cool office and she was doing her best, but she gave me terrible information. Um yeah. So I like that walk in the park with there was something about this guy and just the bullshit that I think I think you said I was trying to prove myself, or I forget what phrase you used, or there was something
Well,
there that rang true.
approval.
Approval. Yeah. I certainly didn't need that dickhead's approval. Like, I really didn't. But yeah, it became like a,
But look how him not approving of you
mm,
skewed your day.
mhm, yeah, yeah, and we're still talking about it. So yeah, like overall, I feel I've got a good grip on that. So it's just it's amazing to see it like swing back around like that. But maybe I needed to for this conversation today. So like I don't know.
Uh, well, if you think about it in terms of the 27th path of intelligence, is it true or is it not true?
Is what true? What?
Putting your hand on a tree can kill it.
Oh yeah, no. What's a horseshit?
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you are in a situation like that
Hmm.
and the solar plexus is reacting to the person, but he's not telling something that's true, it once you have perspective, you can take a stance vis-a-vis him that takes you out of the equation.
Hmm. Okay, I'd like to explore this then if you got a bit of energy for it, because it was one of my questions for today. It's interesting. I have an open solar plexus in the mental world. I had a reading from a fairly prominent human design person a couple years ago who told me I've never been emotional in my life based on that mental graph. Clearly, that's not true, and I am
Because if
defined.
you have an open solar plexus, you're picking up energy from other people.
Yeah. So and I'm defined emotionally ultimately in composite. So that seems to be part of my process lately is recognizing I can feel the emotions and at times it's physical. Like that's the only way to describe it. It's like a my
It is
body.
physical. If we look at the, let me see if I have it here. Um,
But and partly of the whole disempowering thing, like when that fella said that, it set me on my heels. I was like, there's so many things about design that rang truth in me that I took it as I misunderstood what emotions were, and it messed with me for a good year and a half. And I'm still kind of reprocessing it. The other thing that has come to mind a couple times in this conversation is there's something going on within me, like not a rebirth, but a reset on every interaction. I honestly kind of feel like I'm a 9-year-old right now. I've graduated from a 5-year-old and I'm going through life again and correcting misconceptions I had about who I was. And it seems to be like a click into another level. And like it's frustrating because I feel like I'm still dealing with 9-year-old stuff. I don't feel like I'm an adult yet processing this. So it's aggravating and time consuming, but one heck of a ride. Um, yeah, sorry, I interrupt you, but the like I can be emotional. I am that situation. So here's what's happening. I've had a number of interactions where I think anyone else viewing the situation would have said it was emotional, but I found myself detached from the situation, observing it. But later, my body had like a hangover from it. It was like my body had to catch up with what just happened. Like there has been interactions where there was one that I can't remember what happened. It was so disturbing to me, but I handled it so cleanly. But as I was walking down the street, I remember having to like walk into an alley and then just like rest against the wall. Like my body was like, what the fuck was that? Like it was just shaking. But my processing of it had moved on. Like they need to
okay,
kind
so let me show you the matrices.
of.
Look at the matrices. Do they explain what happened?
Are you talking about the park incident?
No, I'm talking about what you just described about emotionality.
Well, I mean, certainly there's no solar plexus in the spiritual world. And,
right?
and the spirit,
Where is this emotional?
where is it? Well, okay, yeah, in the physical and the mental.
And if it's in the physical, we know that the first place emotions register are in the physical body beneath the level of consciousness,
Hmm.
the galvanic skin response.
Hmm.
That's why we have lie detector tests. So if you were in the world, right, and you were exposed to something emotional, it's the mental, physical world, but it can go up spiritually or emotionally for transformation. So initially, your emotions are going to register, and how adept you are and how quickly you transform them within your consciousness is going to determine the toll it takes on your body.
There seems to be a speed to it now that I can sense the gap. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I think I definitely in the past have had interactions that the energy of that hung with me for weeks or months, right? It was just like it was there, but I hadn't processed it. But now it can be measured in minutes, but it's quite jarring. Like, it's really hard to kind of remerge.
I would think that it's only hard when it's an incongruent emotion.
Hmm, that's a
If it's
complicated word.
something, if it's
Incongruent.
something, if it's something that you want to embrace and integrate, it is not disorienting. But if it's an emotion that you don't want to take in, then it needs to transform through creative intelligence rather than through mental world process. And that's where the trick transformational aspect comes in.
Mhm.
For example, I was dealing with someone yesterday in my practice who was very distraught, extremely distraught, and was trying to make sense of patterns in her life that seemed to not have any logic to them. It took quite a long time of going through the history to find the turning point emotionally that then put all of the dominoes in place.
Mhm.
But we had to get, and one of the things I always told my clients was you have to track. You have to track back to where the origin of the feeling was. And you cannot transform it unless you relive it. You can think it, but until you're confronted with another situation where you can redo it differently, it's not completely gone.
I mean, that's what I'm experiencing. It's like I'm getting a do-over
Yes.
experience. Um, and they seem to be increasing in frequency. So I'm either onto something or I'm gonna crash into a wall. But yeah. Hmm.
It's interesting that we're talking about this because if I think about Ra, when he asked Marvin and me to do the science, he had an opportunity to do business honestly,
Hmm.
and he opted to not.
Yeah, so I mean, some speculation, but was it because he was already on the run, so to speak, and the attention would have brought, or
No,
he just was disinterested?
no.
Yeah.
It was because he didn't want to share the spotlight.
Mm,
It was because I pulled out of going to Ibiza in 2000 when he was doing in April of 2000. He was no, it wasn't April of 2000. It was April of 2001. He was going to do the first conference, the Jovian conference in Ibiza. And I was supposed to be a keynote speaker. And I canceled because my daughter almost died. And there was no way I could leave her and my grandson to, at the time, I could not leave.
of course. Yeah.
So he didn't really forgive me for that.
Mm,
And he also had no real interest in the science. He thought the science would prove what he was saying. But when the science did not prove some of the stuff, and I refused to fudge the data, suddenly he formed Jovian and told me not to do anything. So he didn't want me teaching, he didn't want me studying he wanted me to stop everything so that I wouldn't threaten his story. And I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it would have undermined his message the way he wanted it delivered. Yeah. Mm. So I've had this question many times in my head, and so I'm just going to ask you here. Are we sure Ra heard the voice? Are we
No,
sure? Okay, thank you. Um, Zeno actually seemed to be implying that in one of her videos, or that's what I kind of got from it, was that perhaps he had gotten this knowledge from someone else, and then that person was discarded. Um, people seem
that
to,
past him.
right? Because I've heard from people. One thing that seems to be happening for me is people contact me out of the blue with, "Hey, have you seen this?" Like they're kind of poking the bear about the raw thing. They're sending me info, and there's been lots of info, like implied that Ra was working on synthesizing something 10 years before he emerged, and so maybe he was. This was his plan, and he found someone that had something, but he couldn't make sense of it. Like
Oh,
so.
no. 10 years before Ra got the design, he was a ketamine addict. He was on ketamine all the time. He was on marijuana all the time. I never had an exchange with Ra that he wasn't stoned.
Mhm.
His
Even
diet was also quite atrocious.
yeah, yeah, he wasn't taking care of himself. Thus the heart attack, probably, and not the way he said.
Well, he said he knew from the voice the day he would die, and he was going to be shot by a lady who he had met in Arizona, whose son had studied design, and she was going to find him and kill him. And he knew the day and time, and he said the voice was never wrong. Well, he died of a heart attack in Ibiza, so the voice was wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, and this whole idea of the voice, like I've never had a voice speak
I've
to me.
had a voice.
Yeah, and I'd be
It's
interested in.
not really a voice.
Yeah.
It's, I call it a voice, but it's like an inner voice
Mhm.
that says this or that, or you just know because you know because you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I'm learning to trust lately is I get this, um, ask her about this. I get this sense to do that. And that seems to be the voice for me is ask. And usually
Sorry.
got to put the sound bowls back out.
Yeah.
Looks nice. Yeah, it's I have to hear it two or three times too. Because if I interrupted someone with ask them about this, it would be relentless. So for me, it's kind of like this third time's the charm, or if three times I'm like, you got to ask. And it's kind of remarkable because I've done that with other people. Like we'll have a conversation. Now, there's a woman here that um, I just I just asked her, have you had any interesting dreams lately? And she like broke into tears, and it would turn into a whole thing. And then like a week later, she was at a gathering we had here, and she mentioned that event. Like whatever it was so profound. And at the time, I was just like, "Hey, have you had any interesting dreams?" But and I could say that that was my inner voice, but I asked because I had had some dreams, and I didn't usually dream.
Mm.
So it was just an interesting, like, but like clearly it was some sort of moment, like it did something for her, something
Uh-huh.
activated in her. And it was an innocent question, but I knew I had to ask. Uh, so I mean, like that's that inner voice, that's that voice. Hmm.
Are there
Hey,
any viewers who have questions or comments?
let's take a look. Bots and spammers today. Cheap viewers on streamboo.com. Yeah, I don't think that's for us. So, hmm. Um, fascinating. The the voice, like his name was Robert Allen Krakauer.
Yes.
That's the initials of Ra. I have had enough plant medicine and LSD experiences that I know my brain does these funny pattern things when it's in that state. So, if the voice called him Ra, that could also just be his own pattern matching going, I've seen those letters together so many times. I guess that's my new name now, right? I mean, that's quite literally how that voice could be interpreted, especially in an amplified state or a third party influence on that state. So yeah, I think it's important for people to recognize what we're dealing with here. There's this amazing knowledge. It's a synthesis of things that have been around for a long, long time and seem to be just coming, it just seems to be coming back. Like it quite, there's interest in it, there's people sharing, there's people dig.
Well, I think that we're now in the age of Aquarius, and that is spiritual. And my real work, which has been at the core of what I wanted to communicate to the world, is that children need to be brought up spiritually, not mentally. And the four worlds is really a personality theory, and it's a roadmap of self-actualization. Every person I ever saw clinically wanted to be recognized for the core spirit and the who they knew themselves to be. And any system that imposes an identity from outside on a person does them a disservice,
Mhm.
whether it's an IQ test and a number or a personality test or a projective test or a DSM label. Anything we do that limits our perception of another person and who they are does them a disservice. So what I see my real work as is encouraging people to trust themselves and to trust what they know and who they know themselves to be, and to anticipate and expect and communicate who they are and what they need transparently so they can get their needs met. The mental world often tells people not to express themselves, not to ask for what's really important to them. And putting children into daycare, the erosion of the family and of the connection between mother and child has done great disservice with women moving out of the home. We know now that physiologically, when a woman is pregnant, some of the cells of the baby remain in her body for the rest of her life. And that is the bond that connects mother and child. And I don't know if the mother's chemistry is in the baby. I would guess it is. And the family unit eroding has done great damage to the balance of energy in the evolution of consciousness. And I think it's criminal. Um, I don't think it's right to take babies and put them in daycare. I have only had a job when I taught college, was the only time in my life that I ever was out of my home working. And I managed, when I was teaching full time, to leave, to only teach 2 days a week. And I taught 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, no breaks, because I wanted to be home with my kids. So I've never really had a job. I don't know what it would be to work 9 to 5. But I know that when I taught college from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, I didn't like it.
Mhm.
I didn't like being away from home for that long. And when I was, I'd come home tired. And I don't know if I had done that 5 days a week, if I would have been as patient and as present with my children as I was.
Mhm.
But when my children were preschoolers, I remember sitting and reading books with them every single day for at least an hour or two, one child on each knee. When I was working on my dissertation, I took them with me to the computer center and I was holding one child on each knee while I punched cards. They were part of, I was constantly taking care of them, even though I was doing other things.
Mhm.
And women, if they leave their child in daycare, the child's disconnected. So, we're living at very interesting times. And I'm glad to think that family values are coming back.
I hope so. It's the world seems to be a hot mess of um, money, FOMO, acquiring things, jobs being eliminated by AI. People get their self-esteem from their jobs. So,
Well, I have a little bit different view on USAID because most of it's fraud. that's being eliminated. It's not people who are doing jobs. It's
True.
people who are on the payroll who are not doing jobs that are being eliminated. And that has the potential to take us back to true values, where if you have a job and you don't do your work, you get fired.
So
You had that in your business, right?
yeah. Well, it just, you were asking about the interaction when I went to City Hall around that tree thing. And what I saw was three people desperately hoping I would just leave. Like as soon as I walked in, I could see them being like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to do my job now." Or, it's a person from the public coming in with something to request. Is there a form for that? Like just a why, like they were friendly, but collectively none of them were doing anything. And
Right.
and they didn't know what to do with even the information being presented and generally seemed disinterested because it probably meant that they would have to fill out some
It
paperwork.
was a government office.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
On the other hand, I had an experience this week. Um, I'm on a keto diet. I've been on a keto diet for 5 years. I generally don't deviate, and I test my glucose and my ketones every single day. And I've done that for 5 years. So I have a meter that I test on, and my meter was very slow. So I wrote to the company and I said, I'm having trouble. And I got back a message. Well, I had to debug it and do all this stuff. And they sent me instructions and I sent them the data. And they said to me, well, the meter is designed to hold 1,000 readings. You're way over 1,000 readings. So because you've been such a good customer, we're going to send you a new meter.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
So they sent me a new meter. And then I got it and I wrote to them and I said, okay, how do I put this on my phone so it doesn't pick up the readings of the other meter?
Mm.
And um, I got a very nice thank you so much for reaching out. We didn't understand the real problem. Here's what you do. A very good customer service, private company, not the government. And they took pride in their job.
Mhm.
So I think we're getting back to some good values. And in my view, it's up to each one of us to model what we want to have happen. We have to treat people the way we want to be treated, and we have to transform emotional reactivity into love and compassion. However, there are a lot of people protesting, burning Teslas, and thinking that they should be taken care of and accommodated. Violence and destroying property is not consciousness, and it is not values that should be part of our culture.
Agreed.
So we're living in very interesting times. And I think that for the first time in my lifetime, the government is operating to take care of its population rather than to take care of itself.
Oh, say that last part again. The government is.
Helping people, it's looking to raise people's standard of living, stop the taxation that is corrupt, and to return to the people what belongs to the people
Mhm.
instead of the government deciding how to deceive the public.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been taxpayers and the money's gone to corruption.
Yeah.
So, and to programs that I know for a fact had fudged data in order for the universities to get money. And as much as I am very, very grateful for the University of Chicago and my education, my dissertation chairman, who paid my way through everything, all of my study, all of the computer time, all of the interviewers, coders, transcribers, all of that. That was money that was not earmarked for my study. So it was corrupt. He got a lot of money that he didn't need and he had to spend it.
Yeah. I mean,
I benefited. I got a PhD out of it.
yeah.
And I was very diligent and I was a hard worker and I did a good study. But if I look back to how the people in my department got their money, it was dishonest. They made big salaries, did very little work, taught very little, and were very self-indulgent in what they were doing. And they cheated to get the money.
Yeah.
That should never happen in a university. And Ra wanted me to fudge my data,
Mhm.
and I refused.
No, it's good. It's curious, I seem to have always been in a position where I'm observing this kind of behavior. Never okay with it. Always trying to take the high road and end up suffering for it. But like between being in Bermuda around 9/11 and all that, and just the things I saw in the reinsurance industry and the amount of money that was raised based on fear. And at the time, I just was seeing it, but didn't understand it. But then working here in Victoria, provincial capital, government wise, it might as well be the federal behind Ottawa, and then municipal, and just the frustration of trying to be an entrepreneur here literally wore everything out of me. We call it March Madness here, which is the government having, or folks having, like, if I don't spend my budget, I won't get it next year. So they would just, like, they'd come to us saying, we're going to do this project, but and the government, like, these people would say to me, you need to send us an invoice for the next 6 months, but backdate it for this date so that we can get this work done. And so then you go through the motions because that's what you do here. And then I still wouldn't actually get the work because someone decided last minute, now we're just going to get all the executives brand new iPads. So like this
So
happens.
you got them the money so they could advance themselves, but they didn't disperse the money where they were supposed to. Yeah,
And it happens here all the time. And
it
and
happens in all governments around the world. And right now, the American government with Elon Musk and Trump are trying to put a stop to it.
yeah, I mean, I love the whole Doge thing
And
of,
you may need to cut that out because otherwise we could get censored.
yeah, we'll be okay. We'll be okay on that one.
Sure. I
Yeah,
mentioned Trump, we could get censored.
yeah. But no, I agree with you completely. It that's not what's happening here at the moment. So we're on this like time delay and it's infuriating. So
I can understand that.
yeah.
I think we should stop.
Yep. Okay, let's wrap that up.
First time I can go swim in quite a while.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, I'm gonna